tenant approval procedure will be required. And all you need to do for that is to go to, let's get it at Joe's office. Are they prohibited
Right now, we
entirely?
have, as per Waldwick ordinances,
Okay.
such use is not permitted.
Right.
So unfortunately, in order for you to proceed forth with this, you would have to go for a use variance in front of Board of Adjustment.
Okay, use variance in front of a Board of Adjustment,
Correct.
Which is the zoning board.
in front of the zoning
Yeah.
board, okay,
And get the application
okay.
from the clerk. And
It's actually online. If you go to the Board of Waldwick website under forms, there's an application online for such.
Okay, all right, cool, I'll do that. Awesome, all right,
Right.
thank you guys
Thanks
very
for
much for
coming
your
out.
time, appreciate
Thank
it. Take care.
At this time, we have minutes from the January 8th meeting. All members have printed copies. May we have a motion to accept as printed? Motion by Joe Misselwick and John Ververwick. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So just a couple of things before we get underway. We have a hard stop curfew at 10 p.m. because that's just the way it is tonight. So sorry, again, that we got a late start. We will be going out of order on the items. And we are streaming, so it's good to keep in mind, if you're not via microphone, to speak out and project if you could, please. Because sometimes the people that play it back can't really hear. So the first thing we'll do is the resolution for Hal Waggy, SM 24-4, 6 Birch Lane. And members have a copy of the resolution. Motion to dispense with the reading. Motion by Joe Misselwick and Stan. Secretary, please call the roll. For the way they're written, the resolution. Yes? Yes.
Mr.
Sorry.
Valenti?
Yes.
Mayor Giordano?
Yes.
Mr. Verbort?
Yes.
Mr. Berlando?
Abstain.
Mr. Fink? Mr. Kowalski?
Yes.
Mr. Misselwick?
Yes.
Mr. Orbitz?
Yes.
Mr. Basilico?
Abstain.
Mr. Panfile?
Yes.
Mr. Schatz?
Abstain.
Thank you. Sorry, did I not say accept as written? Sorry about that. We'll start with Paul, with the review of open space and recreation plan, consideration for adoption as an element of our master plan. Thank you. Paul Schatz is recusing himself.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Panfile, you can join us. Open seats do not go to waste.
Paul Schatz.
And for the record, Paul Greigel from the Office of the Borough Planner. I am filling in for Barbara Davis from the Land Conservancy of New Jersey.
Oh,
Her
right.
firm prepared this document. She unfortunately had an issue that precluded her from being available to present this evening, but I have worked with her in other municipalities on similar plans, so she saw my name on the correspondence, said I think Paul could probably present it for me.
Awesome.
So that's what I'm doing this evening. She was gracious enough to provide this presentation. The board also, I believe, has provided copies of it, as well as a 2-page handout, a double-sided handout that hits the main points. And frankly, I don't think we need to go into great detail in the presentation, but I can try to answer any questions that come up, because at the end of the presentation, it is a formal public hearing. The public will have a chance to offer any comments, and then the board will be asked to consider adopting this, as you mentioned, as an element of the borough's master plan. So with that, I can get right into it if you
Absolutely.
like. Sure. So.
And thank you for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. And this is the same presentation, so if anyone was at the council meeting, the mayor and council have seen this previously in December, but for the benefit of the board and anyone else who has not, we'll go through this briefly. So again, the why of preparing a plan such as this, it provides a roadmap and framework for open space and recreation in the municipality, but it also helps with Green Acres state funding. It's a prerequisite for that, as well as providing points towards Sustainable Jersey certification. And on top of that, it's just, it's always great to, with any kind of planning effort every 10 years or so, to reassess where things are and to make recommendations for future improvements or how to do things better, where funding can be utilized. There's very specified regulations for both Green Acres and some of the funding programs, but there is local governments can get matching grants through the state, and Waldwick, as you see in some of the handouts, has been a recipient of some of this in the past, and again, hopefully going forward as well with this plan being adopted. Just briefly, here are the overall goals, which are also listed on the handout of the open space plan, providing parks and recreation within a 10-minute walk of every resident, offering a variety of outdoor venues to support recreational pursuits for residents of all ages and abilities, safeguarding a resilient landscape, and integrating cultural heritage to ensure that sense of place. And as the plan goes into, it's not just open space and parks, but also things such as the train station and the historical sites are included within the plan. Again, there's a detailed overview within the plan itself and the handout, but it goes back to 1976 when Brookview Park was acquired through Green Acres funding, or partially at least through Green Acres funding, up to the very recent past when Waldwick preserved the 3-acre Wagner property utilizing money from the Open Space Trust Fund. And along the way, there have been county grants and other grants, as well as the borough's own Open Space Trust Fund, which has a sizable amount of money, over $1.5 million has been collected for that fund. Jump ahead, it's right here, is the numbers for you. Again, you're probably very familiar with this, but there are currently 6 parks within the borough, plus the new potential park of the Wagner property as well, but Ted Bell, Emmett Park, Brookview, Municipal Pool, Veterans Park, and Borough Park. There's just some background within the plan about the benefits of open space. I mean, it may seem self-evident, but again, this puts it in writing and provides a roadmap and some guidance for folks to understand why you're going through this effort, ranging from recreation, providing opportunities for physical activity, to helping with stormwater management and addressing the impacts of storms and climate change and other issues. Some of the overall recommendations include improving and updating existing parks and recreational spaces, acquiring land to expand those parks and creating new ones, creating connections between parks and people. So, for example, there's talk of a connection between Crescent School and the high school, utilizing the newly acquired Wagner property as part of that. Applying to Green Acres grant program, preserving historic places, and stewarding public lands to ensure resiliency. Okay, this goes into more detail on each of them. Again, the idea is to take what you have, an undeveloped property in this case, but to provide an opportunity for future development on this particular property, the Wagner property, but also, again, updating and improving other parks. One of the big recommendations in here relates to potential acquisition, either through purchase or through easements of other properties. So, for example, next to the Wagner property, you have the Waldwick Gardens site. Would be a nice complement if that was to become available and added. Such shown on the far left slide. The blue is the Wagner property, the yellow, which is a recommended expansion, being the gardens. In the middle photo is potential expansion of Brookview Park. So it's over by the Highlands Community Association over by the Saddle River border, which is shown in yellow. That's at the top left, and you have the Brookview Park, which is more open and undisturbed, in blue. And then some properties that actually are in Waldwick but are related or connected to properties in Saddle River. So that might be a difficult acquisition, but potentially, whether through easements or other means, could be a potential for expansion and in preserving that open space and making it, forever protected. And lastly, on the right side is the old PSE&G right-of-way, and creating a linear park or trail through there. I know on parts of it in Waldwick and as well as Hohokus, Ridgewood, and other towns, you have some informal recreation. The idea would be to maybe formalize that. It's a bit disconnected now, but again, to start thinking about utilizing some of those pieces of land that are, would form a nice network and connect to the downtown area. Just generally, the idea is to try to provide parks within walking distance of everyone, as I mentioned earlier, as well as, in this case, connecting schools, connecting people to jobs and opportunities, to services. So this map just shows existing parks with public access, and it's a little hard to see on there the 10-minute service area walking distance in the lighter green. So there are some areas that are currently outside of that. So it's a little hard to pick up, but the darker green are existing parks. I would note the environmental center's off the map. It's not shown on here. But again, it's less of an active park than more of a preserve, although I guess there are trails there. So I would add, you do have a little bit of an option that's not shown on the far left corner or the far west part of the borough. But other than that, that section, over towards the Wyckoff border is limited currently with regard to park and recreation facilities. You're certainly outside the 10-minute walk. Okay, I mentioned Green Acres before. Again, upon accepting state funding, Waldwick then has to update its ROSI, or Recreation and Open Space Inventory. That way it's published, something that planners like me, other folks can go online and look and see what is there that's permanently protected. So when there's state money involved through this program, it's set in stone. If anything, there are ways to replace open space here, but it's, there's very complicated. It's a match, I believe it's 2 to 1 of land and other things that make it difficult to take a property off that open space inventory. Plan also, as I mentioned, talked about preserving historic places. So again, there's some limited existing resources, and the idea is to try to enhance them and to provide opportunities for additional funding for this type of effort. Towards the end here, with regard to stewarding public lands to ensure resiliency, again, it's no surprise to us that we've seen more flooding and unfortunately, more intense storm events in recent years. So the idea being that where you have, whether Hohokus Brook or other water bodies and in the Saddle River over on the far east side of the borough, to try to help preserve land and increase the ability to store carbon through trees, but also hold storm water. On top of just keeping the space open, it's also taking maintenance, of course, and taking other measures as well. But this is, through this plan, trying to identify some of those steps as well as maybe enhancing or improving and expanding those areas. Just briefly on the process, again, I've not been involved till recently, but this has been ongoing with the borough for some time. Again, at the council meeting back in December, it was presented there, but there was a long process that goes back almost a year now from the kickoff of this, and the idea being tonight, hopefully the final step with regard to adoption by the planning board. And with that, that concludes the presentation. I can certainly take any questions to the extent I'm able to answer them. But once you're done with that, as I mentioned, it would be the ability of you to then adopt the plan after having a hearing on it.
That's very concise considering all this.
There's a lot in there. I read through it. I made a
So,
few
yes.
minor suggested
I have a
edits, which
whole
were
list of
reflected
them.
already, but yes.
Chairperson, continue.
Great, thank you.
How practical are the connections to each park? And is that in the near future that could happen? I'm curious.
I'm not directly involved in that, but by reviewing what you have, it'll take time. These are things that, again, you don't have dedicated land in some of these areas to do. It'd be more through on-street in some places, connecting from one park to another, so whether it's through bike lane or other type of measure in some instances. It'd be great with the right-of-way, but I know that's not a simple task to deal with that one, the old PSE&G area. This is, I think, my understanding is it's more longer term, so unless, Mayor and others can correct me if I'm wrong, if there's something more afoot that's more near term that I'm not aware of, I'd be happy to defer to you.
Board members? Questions,
I might have
comments?
missed something, but you
Mr. Mayor?
mentioned when you talked about the Wagner property.
Yes.
You mentioned with the school. What does the school
Oh.
have to do with the Wagner?
Oh, I'm sorry, that was a connection listed, yeah, let me get this.
That's the borough's property, not the school.
No, yes, correct. But it was, the idea was it's in the middle of a connection from Crescent
Okay.
down to the high school, right. It's
Okay.
not, yes,
It's not-
borough property,
Right.
taking advantage of that new resource that if you were to connect through local streets down to Wyckoff Ave.
Okay.
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
Paul, I have a quick question.
Yes.
How does a municipality balance affordable housing versus open space? Or what's the priority?
There's a very, very relevant question at this point in time. It has been. Right now, you're going, spoiler alert, you'll be dealing with this in the next few months, potential updates to the Housing Element Fair Share Plan, which will take us, essentially, if land is already preserved, it's open space, it's off the developable parcels database. So you're allowed to do that if the borough is proactive as it has been. The idea as a planner, stepping back from New Jersey law and all that, the idea is to try to have a balance of that. So you want to have affordable housing and new economic opportunities, but it shouldn't be at the expense of open space. The problem is the state, when it came forth with some of its potential land that could be developed, didn't really look at that carefully at the maps. So it's our job as the borough's planning consultants, we've looked, and the council and mayor have already seen these as well, the maps are out there publicly, looked and said, this one is, for various reasons, things are off the developable list.
So like the Wagner property would be off the development?
Yeah, so now it's, now that's obtained and preserved, yes. Yeah, there are some standards.
It'll never be built.
Great, so that's the idea behind this, yeah. And again, it's not to say, there are other properties out there that can still be obtained, but it becomes a little bit of a battle, I hate to say, because of the whole affordable housing mandates that drives up the desirability of land for, the tug of war between those two purposes.
Thank you.
Wagner property was purchased with the stipulation that it remains parks and that it's named after the Wagner family.
Oh.
So nothing will ever be built on that,
Gotcha.
but parks.
Right. Yes, that would have been, in the last go-round, considered developable land. And now it's, again, that changes, that step changes it.
And just for the records, because one of our board members are very concerned about this, when the woman came to the council and talked about this, they had to take one property off of this map or whatever, which was, well, she suggested it, the pistol range.
Oh.
They took that off. So that's not part of anything, that's an identity all in itself.
Yes, as mentioned in the formal plan itself, that it made it into there. I saw that, yes. So that'll be formalized in that ROSI update.
Anyone else? Comments? Questions? Anyone from the public would like to comment? Questions first, actually, right? Seeing none. And we will vote to adopt.
Discussion first. You open up your questions to the presenter, but then you open up to discussion amongst the board.
Would the board like to talk about how we can move forward the way it is, or anything different that,
What are your thoughts?
open space
When
is a
it
good
came, when
thing?
it came in front of the council, everyone on the council was very enthusiastic about it. We felt that open spaces, taking money from green acres and all that is a good way of doing things. It keeps the cost down to the municipality. And we have all this property that we want to keep as parks. Some residents were concerned because of the fact that sometimes when you take money like this, it's opened up to everybody. But we have rules and regulations on our records that, like when you rent Borough Park out, there's stipulations on who can rent Borough Park out and what the requirements are. So you're protecting yourself that way with our ordinances that we have. And it's a good way of collecting money and helping the borough for
And do the Green Acre grants pay for everything? There's enough funding for them to, or we need to have that in the budget as
No,
well?
they
some of
pay
it.
so much and then we pay. If they don't pay 100%.
So we have to budget each year?
Yeah, that's what we do. Like right now, we're working on we're redoing the Lions Club Park. That's what we're doing, we're fixing that one up now. So little by little, we keep on doing that. And when the time comes for us to work on the Wagner property, we'll be getting money from other sources, and then we have to put money in also. This is all money that's part of our budget.
And what would the time frame be?
We didn't even start that yet. We just approved everything. You're going to be approving it hopefully tonight, and then we'll work on it probably this year sometime. But it's not something that's going to happen right away. And because we have our engineers involved with it, we have everybody else involved with it. We have our Waldeck Access for All group, which is a group of residents that belong to one of our committees that are with disabled people. So they would have to put their input in on what has to be done also, so that they'll be able to use the property.
Sure. Anyone? Mr. Singer?
It's nice to see cooperation between the state and the borough. It doesn't always happen, but obviously, the only question is what was brought up, this tension between open space and affordable housing. Only because isn't the mandate now becoming a mandate to build instead of just a mandate to set aside?
The percentage of the realistic development potential, there's a certain calculation, but it's supposed to be, it's supposed to have some more teeth to it. But that said, it's based on a number that you can still reduce for lack of vacant land. It still relates to that. We'll get, and again, stay tuned for more details in the next month or two. I'll be back to discuss that, as well as with the administration and the mayor and council. But that is going to be a little different than the past rounds.
And what can I say, I'm a newcomer here, I've only been here 30-something years, so
Well, open space is a good thing, so
I agree.
I'm happy about it, and I hope I'm still around to enjoy it. And I hope that everyone thinks that it's something that we should add or adjust to the master plan. How common is this in the areas around us? Are folks doing this? Towns?
Don't have statistical evidence, but in the past year, our firm's been involved in, I think, 2 or 3 of these in Bergen County for other towns where it's the exact same procedure, where we came to, Land Conservancy brings it to the planning board, we advised the planning board, and they adopted it. So it's pretty, again, for all the reasons we cited with regard to Green Acres and everything else,
Right.
and utilizing the funding, it's become pretty common.
And hopefully the state will continue to have money to grant us.
That'd be nice, yes.
Yes. Let me have the gentleman. Sir, if you'd like to come up, please. State your name and address, please.
My name is Jim Bossler. Excuse me. I live in Ridgewood, actually. I'm the chairman of the Open Space Committee. I wasn't going to say anything, except we did use the Land Conservancy in our master plan. And they did somewhat the same type of presentation, and we incorporated into the master plan.
Oh,
So, and
Well, thank you
we're
for
going through
sharing
the same problems you're going through with the affordable housing and open space.
Ah.
And that has yet to be determined.
thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
So the question,
Actually, Ms. Kreidel, what is this board's job at this point? To make a recommendation
believe it's a resolution because you'd be adopting, it's taking action to adopt as an element of the master plan. So whatever the procedure was for the housing element last time, or the re-exam, or when you've done the land use element in the past, so I believe that's a resolution. Yeah, I think it's by resolution, yeah, it's resolution, sir. It's not a referral, it's a formal vote and action that you take. You're the ones that adopt it. I mean, the mayor and council take their own action and pay for it, of course, or they're dealing with that part of it, but planning board by law is statutorily, supposed to adopt it as well.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought, but,
Okay.
you know,
Good to check.
My mother used to say, you don't ask, you don't get.
That's why we did all that notice and everything, to make sure it's done
Yeah,
correctly by state law,
exactly.
yes. And they'll be filed with the county, filed with the state, and it's on the books.
All right,
So we will make a motion to,
to have the attorney draft a resolution in favor of adopting the open space recreation,
for adoption
the
as,
open space and recreation plan as a part of the master plan of the Borough of Waldwick.
as an element of the master plan, yes. Motion,
This is where you say what he said. Yes.
yeah, well, Joyce got it all already, so.
Of course she did.
She's better at it. When she goes, I go, so just so you know.
I've been telling her that for a while.
So we will have a motion to accept that, we would move forward with that. Mark Ramundo, and second by the mayor. Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. We don't need a roll call, right? No.
Put a vote on the record.
Secretary, please call the roll.
Ms. Bedeline?
Yes.
Mayor Giordano?
Yes.
Mr. Report?
Yes.
Mr. Ramundo?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski?
Yes.
Mr. Misulick?
Yes.
Mr. Orbitz?
Yes.
Mr. Basilico?
Yes.
Mr. Panfile?
Yes.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Gragel. Thank you, sir, for coming to Waldwick. We appreciate that. Next, we will take up the review of the Waldwick Board of Education field turf and site improvements at Waldwick High School, 155 Wyckoff Avenue. Who is presenting that? We're just reviewing that? Oh,
All right. Folks, just so you are aware, the Board of Ed comes before this board
nobody's
as...
here. Just for the record, nobody's here.
Well, I'm talking to, we've got a lot of turnover in the board.
Yeah,
We've never done one of these.
nope. I was always on the other side,
Fair enough.
yelling at you guys.
Of course. Why do you think you're up here now?
Thank you very much.
All right, so just so y'all know, the deal is because the Board of Ed is, the school district, is in fact an entity of the Borough of Waldwick, a governmental entity. This board does not have authority over it. However, it's kind of an advise and consent thing. What we're here to do is to look at what they're doing, what they want to do, and give them feedback on it. And that's really as much or as little as the planning board can do in these situations. But hopefully, every once in a while, anyone who puts together a project misses something. And every once in a while, somebody else catches it, because it's a fresh set of eyes. So that's what we're doing here.
Who do we ask questions to?
I think it's, as they used to say on Saturday Night Live, talk amongst yourselves.
Oh, really? I mean,
There's no,
I have some questions, but nobody's going to be able to answer them.
Mr. Singer, I have to say something.
yeah,
I understand we want to discuss this. Why are we
on their case, and we're talking about
I
this.
thought there was gonna be a presentation, to be honest.
Okay,
I thought that the Board of Ed was gonna have someone come before us.
okay.
Given the fact that they don't, I agree with you.
All right. And Adele, I understand we want to finish at 10 o'clock, and when we have a full agenda, and since we're didn't start on time, I don't think that it would be prudent to finish at 10 o'clock.
Well, I'm
Well-
leaving at 10.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Well-
I'm leaving at 10. You do what you want.
We have two,
Okay.
it's 8:30, so,
But then it's more reason to maybe open it up to the applicant instead of...
We are.
Okay.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with that suggestion 100%. We had no idea that the Board of Ed didn't care enough to come.
And then let's just
so if
deliver.
folks want to look at the site plan for the Board of Education, we could, I don't know, is it okay to put our questions together and revisit this, or that's not timely for them?
What's-
Time limit.
Yeah.
The letter is in your folder, what's the date of the letter from when? What is it?
January 17th.
January 17th.
January 17th, huh?
Right here.
Yeah, I mean, I see it. I'm trying to
So
figure out
what's
if we
our,
actually got it anywhere on January 17th. 45-day period. And 10-day period for response, so that's 55 days, if I understand it correctly.
And we can't email or talk about it?
Well, this does allow us to put it on next month's agenda. Everybody now has it to look at, to read.
And March 5th is sufficient?
Well, if it's 45 days plus 10 days to respond,
Okay.
then that comes to 55 days.
It's more than enough.
55 days is almost 2 months.
Why don't we just ask them to please come and talk to us about this? We're wasting time here right now.
Yeah.
We're wasting time.
Let's
Okay.
see if it, we'll work out later how we will invite them.
To March 5th, so we'll table that. Thank you. Next up is the applications for 17 Walter Hammond Place, Associates LLC, and are we doing, obviously, one at a time, so please, Mr. Whitaker. Thank you for your patience.
No problem. Good evening, everyone. For the record, Bruce Whitaker from the firm McDonald Whitaker, representing the applicant. There's two applications here this evening, number 17 and number 25. I'd like to start with your permission to start with 25 W.H. Place Associates LLC. That pertains to 25 Walter Hammond Place. It's shown on your tax map as Block 108, Lot 7. This is property that is in the C-1 zone. We are seeking a site plan approval for this. We've sent out notice to all property owners within 200 feet and provided proof of service as well as proof of publication for that purpose, and I trust that's all in order.
Yep.
Thank you. The applicant is proposing to construct a two-story building with a footprint of about 2,400 square feet. So it's a very modest building. As I said, it's in the C1 zone. The C1 zone permits, as a conforming use, a mixed use. A mixed use here will be with a first floor that will contain either retail or office use, and then above that, on the second floor, there would be 2 apartments. The lot itself has some inhibitions, if you will, as far as the size of it is concerned, and for the purposes of creating a building that will be viable. So we are seeking variance relief as it pertains to the curb along the south and easterly property lines, to request that the curbing be 1 foot from a property line where 5 feet is required. I'm sure all of you are aware of the area. You're also aware there's a wide open space next to this, which you just referenced earlier, which is the old PSE&G easement that runs through that. So although this property is what's owned by the applicant is here, you recognize that in this area also, there's a wide expanse of open space. We've had the opportunity to review the reports of your engineer dated January the 13th of this year. We've also had the opportunity to review the report from your planner. We will stipulate that we can make and meet any of the conditions set forth in those two reports, and we will address some issues that have been raised this evening. With that said, Mr. Ashbayan, who I know you're well familiar with, is here tonight to testify as an engineer, as an architect, as well as a planner for the purposes of making this presentation. And with that, unless there's any questions of me, the only other thing I would add is that as far as parking spaces are concerned, we're going to testify to that this evening because some questions have been raised about the parking, and we will comply with the ADA requirements, of course, and move ahead that way. I think what you're seeing here tonight, this site plan review, is that it really makes a piece of property very viable in your downtown and your commercial area, and for that purpose meets a lot of the conditions under the second section of the municipal land use law as far as the purposes of the land use law is concerned. So I would ask that Mr. Ashbayan be sworn in, and we can move ahead from there.
Mr. Ashbayan, good to see you. Did I have to swear you in 3 times tonight? Is that how that works?
Probably.
Do I have to swear you 3 times since you're wearing 3 hats? Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear testimony you're about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, sir, I do.
State your name, spell your last.
Thomas V. Ashbayan, Ashbayan.
And for the record, Mr. Ashbayan is very well known to this board and absolutely is qualified as an expert in the 3 areas which he is going to testify to, and that is as an engineer, as an architect, and as a planner. And as such, he can give you opinions. You're not bound to follow them, but to the extent you find them helpful, you are absolutely permitted to rely upon them.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singer. And with that said, Mr. Ashbayan, you've been engaged by the applicant for purposes of preparing the plans that were submitted with this application. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And these plans that were submitted are before us this evening on the board up there?
Yes, they are.
I'd like you to just identify the plans with the date and the final revision date. And Mr. Singer, we can mark those as A1 collectively? Go ahead.
So the whole set?
Whole
The
set.
set of drawings are comprised of SP1, SP2, and SP3, and there's also an A1, the architectural schematic. A1 is an overall site plan. SP1 is an overall site plan. SP2 is a soil conservation and landscape plan. SP3 is the lighting plan, and of course, the A1, as I've already suggested, is the architectural floor plan elevation.
Mark it all as A1.
Got it.
And while he's doing that, Mr. Singer, I found an extra set of the plans in my file. So,
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. I appreciate that.
Mr. Ashbayan, would you describe what the existing conditions are on the property, and then go into what is being proposed?
Certainly, 25 Walter Hammond Place is a very rectangular piece of property, unconventional. And on that property currently is a residential style building up front, very close to the right-of-way. And there is also an existing garage that's virtually on the property line to the rear. The buildings currently are non-conforming in their arrangement on the property, but of course we are proposing to remove those 2 buildings. There's also an area of, it's not pavement, but it's packed down stone that has served for parking for those 2 buildings for probably many decades. The site itself is otherwise fairly flat. There is a line of trees along the northern border, and there is, of course, as Mr. Whitaker's already suggested to the board, a rather large PSE&G right-of-way that passes immediately to the south of the property, through that right-of-way and to portion of the subject property are some municipal storm drainage and sanitary easements that are completely respected following the development. all setback requirements, and the property itself does conform entirely to the statutory requirements for the size of the property. We are proposing a rectangular building, again, first floor. It's a mixed use, so first floor would be a commercial business service type building. There are a number of uses enumerated in Mr. Greiger's report. List is very long, so the first floor would be some sort of business use. The second floor, which must have its own entrance, would be comprised of 2 apartments. The parking is laid out in a very simple L-shaped fashion. A line of parking along the front line facing Walter Hammond, and a line of parking along the south line facing the public service right of way. Significantly, we are in full conformance with the minimum open space of 15%. We have 19.5%. And the maximum improved coverage of 85%, we are at 80.5%, so we're well in conformance with the coverages. In the mixed use ordinance, there is also a floor area ratio that we must respect. There's a maximum of 0.75, so the amount of building that's on land has to be calculated. So the maximum under your ordinance is 0.75. The building we're proposing represents 0.834.
0.384, it says.
0.384, almost half of what's actually allowed. So it's a very modest proposal in that all the coverages are met, the green spaces are respected, you don't exceed the coverage, and significantly, the floor area ratio is very low relative to what's possible. We have provided a series of details for the application, provided the zoning, of course. On the second sheet, SB2, there's the soil conservation plan, which would be going into the conservation district. We have provided a dedicated landscape plan. And finally, the lighting plan, basically addressing the L-shaped property with 3 lighting fixtures, conforming to the lighting ordinance in the borough, where we haven't conformed with code 4, where the minimum requirement is 0.2. We have reviewed the letters of both the Boswell office, Mr. McGinnis, and the village price office, Mr. Greiger. And as Mr. Beard has already stated, he stands in to conform to technical adjustments that need to be made for the plan to their satisfaction, full satisfaction.
So before we go through the reports themselves, I'd like to just walk through some other aspects of the plan. Let's just take a look at the building itself and the facade, just to describe what that is and what the layout is and what the building material will be for the exterior.
The image to the left here is the 25 Walter Hammond building. It would be comprised of, most likely 2, but could be 1 commercial space. Very rectangular. On the second floor, we would have 2 basically twin apartments, each one having 2 bedrooms. The facade of the building would be almost a residential conventional looking space, but for more windows on the first floor, some sort of applied masonry on the first floor, a little more durable, given that there will be a lot more activity. The second floor presents itself as a residential appearance, windows, siding, roofing. We clipped the gables to kind of reduce the massing of the building. But generally, the building will have a residential character, but of course, like I mentioned, while we are for the purposes of the business use.
What type of building material will be used for the roof and for the siding?
Residential roofing,
building itself will meet the height requirements of the code?
Yes, we are in conformance with the height.
In connection with the apartments themselves, they'll each be self-serving, they'll have their own laundry facility, and they'll comply with all of the building code requirements?
That is correct. And then, the mixed use, there are certain fire standards that we have to meet that Mr. Lewick is aware of, and during any building process review, building permit process review, we would have to demonstrate that those fire separations are respected.
Okay, we can go back to the plan itself. I'd like to just walk through an overview of what drainage is being proposed.
On 25 Walter Hammond, we have drainage pits. We can take a small amount of credit for the existing buildings, so they're already considered their drainage aspect. The roof drains from the building itself are directed into a pit, and secondarily connected into a second pit for drainage, for seepage into the ground, and ultimately there is an overflow from the two pits into an existing municipal basin in Walter Hammond Pipes driveway.
Would it be correct to say that the drainage plan and system that you're proposing will meet all of the requirements under the local ordinances as well as any state guidelines and requirements?
Yes, it will, and again, we stand ready to satisfy our engineer on the requirements for the drainage system.
And in that regard, if the board were to approve this plan, we're stipulating, my understanding is that you will submit the appropriate drainage calculations and soil permeability tests will be conducted. Is that correct?
That is correct. We will have the tests done, and the system will be working accurately.
Okay. The report from Boswell Engineering also speaks in terms of the ingress, egress, and parking. Again, just for the record, can you describe the number of parking spaces, what's required, and where the ingress and egress is?
Ingress and egress is provided by a 24-foot throat perpendicular into the site, which actually aligns with the southern portion line of the parking, spaces 7 through 16, and one would also access similarly the north-south driveway to access spaces 1 through 6. All spaces are conventional in size. We do have a handicapped parking space and the attendant van accessible space. One item that's come up in the report is making, or it's a make-ready parking space. We would designate one of the spaces, probably most likely number 6, as a make-ready charging space for an electric vehicle.
You will see in the reports between your planner and your engineer, one says we need an EV make-ready space, and one report says we don't. We will stipulate that we will have one made ready, so we will do that. In connection with the location of a dumpster area, recognizing this building is 2,400 square feet, what is being proposed as far as the small amount of refuse that would be generated from a building like this?
We've designated a trash area on the northern edge of the site, space approximately 6 foot by 8 foot. This is, again, 2 apartments and 2 small commercial uses. We don't expect there to be a full dumpster here. We would expect there would be a private car, most likely with barrels to be collected, rather than a full-size trash truck with a lift. Very, very small building, very limited amount of trash that we generate.
We're stipulating, of course, that the trash and refuse collection will be a private carter. In connection with the soil movement aspect, if this board were to approve this site plan, at that point, a typical soil movement application would be submitted, correct?
We have submitted a soil.
I'm sorry, you've
application,
submitted that.
but
Just what are the approximate quantities?
Mr. McGinnis has asked for some quantities to be confirmed. We are putting a partial basement in the building for mechanical use. So there is a small amount of soil that would be used for that, and soil that would be removed for the brought onto the site would be completely clean soil, and that would be stone for under footings and the drainage system, and topsoil for the new landscaping. There's no other soil that would have to come onto the site.
In connection with the report, there was a request for input from fire subcode official in the town as far as striping is concerned. We can stipulate that we can comply with any type of fire safety striping that would be required in the parking lot?
Yes, we could. We most likely expect the request to come through for a no parking stripe, yellow area along the perimeter of the building, and we can very easily accommodate that.
In your opinion, as a planner and engineer, in looking at a site like this, is there a necessity or need for a loading zone?
I highly doubt there would be a loading zone needed, given that, one, half the building is residential, that would hardly need a loading area. Two, the small businesses that would be here could be retail, could be service, so likelihood one is service, one's retail. Deliveries would most likely be made into a parking space, delivery from either product or delivery service or a FedEx would be a space that would be utilized for.
The Boswell report of January 13th specifically talks about modifications to the overall landscaping, talking about how the plant beds should be mapped, certain screen plantings are recommended, certain small flowering native tree is recommended, etc. You've read through these?
Yes.
And without belaboring the point, we can match and meet all of the requirements that run in paragraph 26A through L?
Yes, it's a rather long list, but.
M, I'm sorry, M, I didn't turn the
they're
page.
all pretty simple to accomplish. Fairly routine type landscaping adjustments for all of that.
We have on this plan a proposed sign.
Yes, there is one ground sign, it's not a pylon. There is a ground sign, we would expect that would be internally lit. It would sit basically at the northern edge of the entrance to serve anybody driving by to see, what businesses might be here. Of course, the likelihood is there's only two businesses, so the sign would be rather modest in its presentation.
And the sign will comply with all the zoning code requirements.
Yes, the size, location, and the position of the sign fully conforms with regulation.
In connection with the report by Mr. Greigel, you've had the opportunity to review that, correct?
Yes, I have.
I believe everything that you've covered in the Boswell report is also covered in this report, but there's nothing different in terms of what's being requested. But we can comply with any of the suggestions that have been made in that report.
Yes, we can.
This is all I have on direct at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Whitaker.
This is for the site plan aspect. Before we start, maybe I could just have them cover the two variances. Should we do that? Would you point out the two variances are being requested, and from a planning aspect, what the basis and foundation for granting such variances are in this instance?
Certainly. There are two variances associated, two rather small variances. One is we are suggesting or introducing a curb along the east portion, very small portion, the east side of the property, and most of the length of the northern part of the property. Where there is supposed to be by the ordinance a 5-foot setback, we are setting the curb at the property. The reason that we're looking to do that is, one, to try to maintain all the conforming size and number of parking spaces along the southern property line. I'll remind the board, there is a very large right-of-way that is, we're not using, we're not touching, but does provide a very adequate visual setback and green setback, in as much as it does have greenery. Along the eastern side, we actually are up against a there's the building, and immediately on the other side, more parking and a fence on the current property. So what we're doing here is really not offending any adjoining property or the public, because they are parking curb areas are very discreet. The trash area is a little interesting. While we would have preferred to have a trash area in this end portion of the property, we did receive a comment from the planner's office that we missed. A condition of the mixed use in the ordinance, one of the conditions is that any trash area be located 15 feet from the property. Probably not a bad idea, but in this particular case, because of that condition of the mixed use, for us to have put the trash in the area that we would have preferred would have created
It'd be a conditional use variance, so you would not have jurisdiction, we'd have to go to the zoning board of adjustment. So by the virtue of what your ordinance requires, makes us comply with your ordinance by placing it where it is, correct?
a rather odd circumstance, but we can conform to the 15 feet in each direction by placing it in that particular location. It's a location that is least likely the area to be parked. Most people will be parking in spaces 6 through 2 and 7 through 12, so we don't feel that having the trash there would be an impediment from a practical standpoint. Visually, we have landscape along the front to obscure the area, so we don't feel like it's really an offense to the public or to the overall plan on the site. We're trying to accommodate peculiarity in the ordinance.
And in connection with the curbing is required from a safety element for parking spaces, correct?
Correct.
And by virtue of placing these curbing, as we're showing here, we're complying with creating parking spaces that meet the code requirements.
That is correct.
And when I look at this curb and I look beyond the curb, especially to the south end, I'm not going to really realize where there is a property line, because, and my understanding is that past that curb, it's all green space. There's no fencing, there's nothing to show a demarcation between the applicant's lot and the PSE&G right-of-way, correct?
That is correct. There's no practical purpose for having a 5-foot parking setback there.
And as far as the curbing that would be running to the east or to that portion to the property where the building is, there's a building next door that is non-conforming as far as the setback is concerned.
Correct. The building next door is, it might be conforming, but it's within 10 feet of the property.
And so the purpose of putting the curb where we're putting it here properly has a demarcation for the property line itself, and from a safety standpoint, accommodates the parking that's proposed there in the parking lot.
Yes, it does. And additionally, there's a fence already separating the parking lots on either side of the proposed property and the current property.
From your perspective as a planner, recognizing your understanding of municipal land use law, in your opinion, is there any substantial detriment to the zone plan or zoning ordinances in this instance by virtue of the two requests being made for variance relief?
In my opinion, no, they're not. They're both relatively de minimis requests for variance.
Thank you. Now I'm concluded. Open it for questions.
There are no garages attached to this building, correct? It's
No,
the other one.
there's no garage.
No garages on this.
No basement?
Partial.
There's a partial basement in the building.
Oh, there is?
Basically just for utilities.
Do you know how deep it's gonna be?
Conventional 8 feet deep.
Both buildings gonna have basement?
Yes, partial basements.
Partial basement.
For mechanical space.
Okay.
Are
Are you gonna be touching the trees that are there? The three, I see 3 trees, basically.
There are some pretty fairly significant trees along the northern property line. Some of them may well be affected by the construction, but we have put on additional landscape. At the time that we do that work, we would probably like Mr. Melisworth to come out and tell us, yes, take the tree, or try to limit it up and save it.
Because the town has a permit, I mean,
Oh, it has.
So we understand
Go through
that
the permitting
we're
process, yes.
obligated to ask first before cutting.
and are you, there's trees in the southeast corner that, can't quite tell if they're on the property boundary or not, but what about those trees? Are they on the PSE&G?
Those trees are a little further down, they're on the next to.
No, I mean, on the southeast, there's a tree, well, just in the aerial, there's a tree in the southeast corner of your property, or just on the PSE&G property. I don't know if it's on there or right on the border.
Probably is on the PSCG property, so it doesn't appear on the survey.
Okay.
These appear on the survey.
Yeah, there's a fairly big one, right in the corner, the southeast corner of your property.
Again, we know that we have to ask before we cut, and we have provided additional new street trees in lieu of whatever trees.
Okay.
The entrance to the retail is in the front, right?
Correct.
And then the access to the apartments, you said the side?
Is also in the front.
Oh, in the front, I'm sorry.
Big thing like that.
The ordinance specifically says that the residential has to happen independent access. So there would be 2 accesses for the commercial space and one right in the middle to go up a stair to the.
So it'll be all separate.
Yes.
And then
Very
the-
conventional setup.
And the basement is gonna be storage for what, the apartments or both retail and apartments?
Utility space, if the landlord permits, the commercial space would have access to the basement, should it not?
Are the top apartments rentals, or are they going to be for sale?
Rentals.
Are there any affordable housing credits for this?
No, because we're under the 5 requirement, there'll be a contribution that has to be made to the Affordable Housing Fund. It's a builder's, it's even, same as if you were building a single-family home.
Sorry.
It's a shame we have to worry about that, right?
The 2 apartments share a staircase.
Correct. Right up, and then you get to the top and
Either side.
or either side.
Gotcha.
No balconies,
I'm sorry?
no balconies or anything?
No, you see
Right.
what we showed you on the architecturals. Very simple, very modest, and neat.
No space outside, in the building?
No.
There's a 10-foot setback. Models. And there's another building immediately.
Anyone else? Anyone from the public have any questions? Please, come up, your name and address, please. Yeah.
Jim, can you give him the microphone?
My name is Van Harness. We have
Spell that, please.
HORNESS.
What's
However,
your address,
we have,
sir?
I'm sorry, what?
Your address?
My home address at the moment is and will be in St. Petersburg, 1964 Carolina Avenue, St. Petersburg, Florida. We also have a home here in Saddle River, which we had for about 30-some years. We own this property, and I'm just a little confused about something. We didn't have a chance to talk, but I just wanted to make sure that what we're talking, this is Lot 8, or is it Lot 7?
This is lot 7.
Okay, because the problem that I
think we need whatever you're saying on the record, so if you would be
Oh,
so
okay.
kind.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to get more
Absolutely.
specificity about that, whether it's lot 7 or 8. Now I understand it's 7. Having the property next door,
Which
my,
property, sir?
40 Franklin Turnpike, we have the little school, Juice Me in the
That's what I
front,
thought.
and the other one on the salon. My read for the board would be, I think it's an excellent idea. I think it's something that the town needs, even though I don't live in this town, but my roots are here. I particularly like what I could see of the drawing, what the presentation in effect would look like to the community. I don't see that it causes any problem with our contiguous properties. It seems like everything's pretty much, that I would have some concern about, is really being addressed. So I'm a proponent. So even though I'm not a resident here, but having the property and gifting all these property taxes each year, which, by the way, you've actually contained them very well, so, relative to Florida. So I'm just a supporter. I just would like to vocalize that to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I like your hat, sir.
Oh, it's my solo hat. You should see the red one.
We're cutting that from the record, by the way. Anyone else? Any comments from anyone? Should we talk to Mr. Guinness? Mr. Guinness? Yeah?
I have no comments. I'm
All good?
satisfied with all the
Awesome.
the responses they gave us. I have no comments or questions for them.
Wonderful.
Mr. Whitaker, needless to say, your stipulation that you are complying with everything in the reports goes forward as well, any subsequent reports.
Absolutely.
Just wanted it on the record.
No problem at all, no. We have a very good relationship with your professionals, and we work through it, and they are very good in providing us with a very thorough report that we reviewed prior to coming to this meeting, so that we would be prepared to address it.
Anyone else? A motion for,
Get
oh,
the comments.
John?
Get the comments on the record.
I make a motion.
Not yet.
Oh.
Folks, it really helps in the long run for the board to actually express, this is where I actually want your opinions, because it does help to have it on the record, what you're thinking when you vote as you do.
I think it's a good project for the town. It's going to make the town look a little more nicer. It's a lot there in the house there. It'll just make the community more engaging, and hopefully will bring more retail into the community, whatever that might be.
Yeah, I don't think it's overdone or ostentatious at all. I'm curious about the colors. Did you talk about colors? Might be important to some of us. Bright pink? No, I don't like pink. Thank you anyway. Sir?
And we don't have any jurisdiction over colors.
Yes,
I would
understood.
expect the colors would be probably
Burgundy?
whites and grays and a touch of black. That seems to be what everybody.
Well, it's very pleasing to the eye, so I'm very happy with it. Thank you. You did a great job.
Yes, I think it's a big improvement over the looks, the current looks, and it'll be a nice addition.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It'll make a difference when you go down that street. Very nice. Good?
I'm good. It looks good.
One less problem with property maintenance.
Yeah. One less
At least the grass will be.
property
the moment.
maintenance.
We'll have some for you to do.
Mr. Joe, anything?
No, the property's been vacant for a long time. I've lived in town all my life, and I know it's always been vacant, just for that little yellow house there. And I
Yeah.
knew
That's what I was looking at
two
on the
people
map.
that lived in that house through the years. They were longtime residents of Waldwick, so I think be a great improvement for that area.
That's what I was looking at on my phone.
out there on our property, so,
Then I don't have to call David.
but, yeah, I think it's an improvement for that area for sure.
That's good.
Go for it.
Motion for a resolution to move forward. That was John Margolis and the mayor. And we'll take a roll.
Ms. Badalamenti?
Yes.
Mayor Giordano?
Yes.
Mr. Verboort?
Yes.
Mr. Ramundo?
Yes.
Mr. Fink?
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski?
Yes.
Mr. Missowek?
Yes.
Mr. Orovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Basilico?
Yes.
Mr. Penfile?
Yes.
Mr. Schaff?
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you very much.
Passes. Next.
You gotta do this again?
Yeah.
There's an old expression called Blue Day all over again. I guess perhaps that's what we have right now.
How much
We'll
it
walk you
costs
through
us
the second one. I have an extra plan of that.
Oh.
Thank you, thank you. No, we're getting enough time.
So keep yours
Yeah, no,
folded.
it's fine.
Keep yours
I am.
folded so it's nice. And then we'll keep that.
We take good care of it, you know.
Oh. Thank you.
Yeah,
So this is 7.
So the next application is on behalf of 17 WH Place Associates LLC. It is for 17 Walter Hammond Place in Waldwick, Block 109.01, lots 1 and 5.02. As shown on your tax map, we'll stipulate, and one of the requirements for this is that we would combine both lots, so this would become a single lot for purposes of the site plan approval that we are requesting. Yes, this is a C-1 zone. We are conforming as it pertains to your conditional use with retail on the first floor, and it would consist of a building itself of approximately 2,600 square feet, and we would have retail or office on the first floor, and then 2 apartments above, and it will meet the mixed use requirements of your C1 zone. The applicant in this instance will be seeking, similar to what we had before, the curbing to be less than the 5 feet from the property line, and the front yard setback that is proposed is going to be proposed to be 10 feet rather than 15 feet, and a side yard setback of 0.5 feet with 10 feet is required. The difference between this lot, and I'll let Mr. Brian describe it further, and the other lot is that we have what's what we call an unusual condition, and that is when we look at the lot configuration, it's not the rectangular that we dealt with before. But what is appropriate also is that there is the PSE&G open space, if you will, easement that obviously provides a substantiation for the variance relief that we are seeking. We have 13 parking spaces proposed, 13 parking spaces for the retail and 4 above, so we are requesting 17 spaces overall. I'll let Mr. Brian walk us through that. We will comply with the reports that were provided to us, the Bible report of January the 13th and the Rogers report of January the 16th, and we're stipulating we can meet all of the conditions set forth in that. You'll see that this building is going to be very similar in style to the other building, not making it look like a twin, because architecturally and streetscape-wise, some modifications to it will look, I think, more appropriate. That's an overview of the application, so we are basically seeking preliminary and final site plan approval and variance relief. And with that said, I have Mr. Ashbine testify to these plans, and the plans that we have up here will Mr. Ashbine put on the record, and we'll mark them as A1.
Can you just tell me if you said 16 or 17 parking spaces?
17 parking spaces are required.
Oh,
I think Mr. Ashbine's going to tell us that we're proposing 16, so we have to seek the variance for 1 space.
Mr. Ashburn,
You're
you're
still
still
under
under oath.
you're on the...
Thank you. And
Good
his
to go.
and his qualifications
Yeah.
are still recognized. So with that said,
I'm not sure
he hasn't
about
lost
that
any of his license in the last 5 minutes. So with that said, please proceed.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, property very similar in some respects to what we've just discussed at 25. However, this, you can see in the key plan, right-of-way, which is 50 feet wide along Walter Hammond and about 100 feet wide midway through this property. I'll use a highly technical planning term. To me, this looks like the missing tooth. In the streetscape of Walter Hammond, right after the post office, the site just, everything just disappears. Currently up at 25, there is a building, albeit it's not pretty and not well kept, but there's a building. So visually, the street feels anchored. Here, there's nothing at all. There is a very long line of trees along the front, but there's no built space at all. I have no idea whether there may have been a building here at some time in the past or what it might have been. I don't see any evidence of it, so for all I can consider, it's been a vacant site for a very long time. And again, to me, it looks like the missing tooth in Walter Hammond. That said, the development is, the configuration is different from 25. The building is somewhat more irregular in shape in response to the strange size, very tapered property. The parking is all across an axis entering from Walter Hammond. The axis is not perpendicular. It's slightly skewed, but all parking is accessed immediately off of the 25-foot wide driveway. All the same conventions of what we've respected, details of various improvements on the property are depicted. For the zoning aspect, the property is actually slightly larger than the adjoining property, but it does meet all the bulk requirements of how large the property is going to be, how much frontage it has to have. We do have improved lot coverage where 85% is maximum. We have only 72%. So actually, this is slightly better than our prior presentation. And for minimum open space of 15%, we have 28%. So that's even better than what we have proposed to the board on the prior application. We do also have the maximum floor area ratio of 0.75. This property's at 0.412. So we were well below the maximum FAR ratio established for a mixed-use building. Zone is the same as 25, the C1. Where this property needs some help is because of the very narrow shape. We moved the building forward to 10 feet, so we have created and requesting a variance for a 10-foot setback to the front line in lieu of a 15-foot requirement. We meet our side yard setback to the south, but to the north, again, because of this skewed line, we've created a somewhat irregular shaped building, and we're holding the building a half a foot off of the property line. That is a variance. And we are also requesting a variance along the northern line, along 5 spaces, white parking spaces, whereby we are putting the curb on the property line. Again, that property line is the line that immediately adjoins the PSE&G right-of-way. So visually, for purposes of somebody discerning where the property is or isn't, one can't see the setback of a half a foot for the building, and one can't see the curb line on the property line because of its adjacency to the public service right-of-way. Again, for the record, we stand ready to meet all the requirements set out in the Boswell letter. Many technical points that we have to address, such as the make-ready parking spot. I believe we picked probably spot number 16 and run conduit to it for make-ready for an EV vehicle. All the drainage is contained entirely on the site. There will be no spillage. The entire parking area is enclosed by curb line, and basically it's dished to keep all the drainage on the site. we have a series of trees along the front of this property. They're a mix of pin oak and I think it's white pine. They're all rather large. Again, we would ask Mr. Meliswick to come out at the time that's appropriate and tell us, should they be limbed up? Should we take every other one out? The trees are all of varying conditions, so it's possible that one or two of them might disappear. They basically straddle the property line. They're shown being in the right-of-way, but visually, they're on this property. So we would take direction from your officer on what to do with those trees, notwithstanding we have a fully developed landscape plan, anticipating keeping them, but landscaping on the rest of the, on the rest of the site perimeters. Again, we need a variance for the building setback along the northern property line, setback for parking of 5 feet, where we only believe we have 1 foot, we have the parking on the property line. Our trash is not in the front yard, and we do meet the 15-foot setback requirement.
Take us through the architectural aspect of this building.
Architecturally, we will have a building that obviously is much more irregular in shape. 2 stores, 2 apartments. Because of the unusual shape, we have 2 spaces that are somewhat uneven in size. The apartments, again, are uneven in size. Because the front one is larger, we managed to get 3 bedrooms on one side, 2 bedrooms on the other side. Architecturally, the building will be very similar. Residential type and style shingle on the roof, residential type and style windows on the 2nd floor, and then we'll introduce the same type of masonry and siding elements. The colors will probably be consonant with the other building, but the building will appear different because of its somewhat irregular plan. The eye will see all the movement in the building facade, whereas the rectangle, all your eye is going to read is the front wall.
Like the other building, separate entrance with the residential on the 2nd floor, correct?
Correct, separate entrance, individual entrance, you come in, go up, and then go to either side to get into the tool.
Partial basement for mechanicals, correct?
Partial basement would basically be just in the center of the building for mechanicals.
In connection with the variance for which being sought, you explained it. NJSA 40:55, C1 pertains to unusual conditions or an unusual configuration of the lot. From a planner's aspect, do you believe that this lot fits within the confines and the concept of an irregularly shaped lot?
Yes, short of the missing tooth planning aspect, because of the unusual shape of the property, it's kind of telling us we need a variance here, because we can't put the building into a location that would make anything conforming, and if we did so, then there wouldn't be any room for parking. So it's a balance of how we create utility out of an unusual shaped lot. And from a planning perspective, I believe that this is a solution that can achieve utility of the lot, and with the variances, not disturb the public good and the zoning ordinance.
So in that instance, it would have no substantial effect to the zone plan or zoning ordinances of the borough of Holbrook.
In my opinion, that's correct.
Thank you. This concludes our presentation at this time.
Thank you.
I don't see where the entrance to the apartments are, in between the 2 commercial.
The entrance into the apartment is here, and it goes straight up.
I don't see it here on the facade picture on the bottom. I see two
That's
doors.
it's at an angle.
I'm sorry?
It's at an angle,
There's actually sidewalk right here,
tucked in.
Ah,
so it's kind of behind, you wouldn't see it from the
side
street.
Gotcha.
It's behind this corner here.
The
This
side of the
small
building
window?
is gonna be on Walter Hammond, but the frontage will be towards the parking
Perpendicular.
lot facing the post office.
Gotcha. Understood. Thank you.
You,
the west.
you have generated in each unit, each side, right? Generator. Each building has a generator. You have it in the specs here. Am I correct? You don't have, I thought it said generator here.
No, we don't generate, we have air conditioning.
Where it says exemption. The generator shall manually provide.
I apologize, I'm not sure whether you can see that. On the
Is
application,
that on the,
On the plan or on the?
Okay, that's right. I got it.
You threw us by giving us a big chunk of the code.
Yeah.
And there's one other aspect of that, 16 spaces provided, 17 required.
17 are required, we're proposing 16, so we're requesting that variance. I believe the variance is de minimis, and I would point out to the board that there is actually on-street parking on Walter Hammond, which would ameliorate that circumstance. And of course, the fact that we have a mixed use where you have apartments where people are there in the evening parking, stores are closed, and the other way around for the daytime, we don't expect there to be an issue for the sites at all. And people probably will still persist in using on-street parking.
do the apartments each get a designated spot
Your ordinance requires two.
that are
We'll have-
residential?
Right. And we
There's-
will, in our lease, we will tell them where to park.
Oh. Those are really nice trees in front of that property, so we hope Joe can save them. I'm looking at that picture here, too.
There's some
Our
nice
plan is
trees
to
there.
save them.
They're very close, so we'll rely on Mr.
Very
Willis's good work.
I think it looks really wonderful next to the other. Which one of these is not like the other, but it's really like very nice.
On the plan, are all these dry wells, or they, I assume they're all dry, 1, 2, 3, 4, on this particular, there's 5 dry wells, right?
This site does not have the benefit of a overflow onto Walter Hammond.
Right.
The storm system doesn't run down this far, so we have to make sure we can contain everything. And we'll,
So there's 5 of them.
yes,
And on the other one, there was 2, but you did an overflow into the
we had
storm sewer
overflow and
on the road.
on the first one, we were able to deduct or take the benefit of there already being building on it. But we'll satisfy Mr. McGinnis to the extent that he tells us what we're supposed to do.
Okay.
Yeah, and for the record, we haven't reviewed any calculations yet, but obviously we'll make sure we review them and it'll be conforming with our requirements.
Right, right. So I see that the 2 are, there's 2 of them go off to the, they're after the roof drains, I assume, going to the.
Yes,
to
all
Eagle
the
Cove.
building roof drains go into the pits, on both sites.
So we can consider the pits that are spec'd at this point to basically be the minimum. That if need be, they'll be expanded.
Exactly.
And I know you touched in reference to major soil movement permit on a previous building. Did you discuss this one?
Yes.
Yeah, similarly, we have submitted a permit form, but we will be adjusting the calculation
Okay.
for discussion with Mr. McGinnis.
Any other board members? No? Okay. Anyone from the public have questions?
Actually, I have a question. On the architectural plans, my review letter, I noted the 3-bedroom apartment didn't have a laundry room. Did I miss that, or?
Architectural oversight, probably all I'm gonna do is split this mechanical space
lit the same way as the last
It
site?
would be a backlit sign,
Same way, okay.
same as we proposed on 25. Again, basically, there would be two tenants, the signs would be pretty modest. And it conforms in all sizes and location.
Help me out. I thought the testimony was that these two properties are going to be conjoined ultimately.
No, the two lots that make up this property.
Oh, this
Two
one.
lot numbers.
Gotcha,
Two
okay.
lots.
Thank
There's no
you.
conjunction of 25 and 17.
All right, thank you.
So there's
I
gonna be-
misunderstood that.
Thank you for noticing that, Mr. McGinnis.
I have one more question.
Yes,
Fine.
please.
And I forgot to ask it at the last application, but, any building method lights?
Only at an entrance.
Exit,
Yeah,
okay.
we can adequately cover the building with the overhead.
Okay.
I have a question, and it's more of a guidance for Mr. Singer. Right now, currently, each building is proposing 2 retail or commercial spaces. Has happened in the past in any other retail commercial buildings. You know, someone might come and says, well, I don't need other than maybe 500 square feet. How does this play where potentially the 2 units, could they be divided into more spaces? How would that be treated from zoning perspective? Because we've had that situation in the past where we would have a commercial building that were approved for number of uses, and then next thing you know is that these spaces are being somewhat carved and divided exactly into more spaces. How would that come up, or if it does come up?
Well, once upon a time, it would have come up because it would have come up on tenant review.
Correct.
But then again, my recollection is that the zoning officer has the prerogative to refer for tenant review where it seems appropriate. Am I wrong on that?
No, that's okay.
And I'm not trying,
I got my answer.
I'm not trying to dump it on you, really. There's one other possibility. I'll throw it out there because, you know, it's worth asking. Would the developer accept deed restrictions on the commercial spaces that they can't be subdivided?
No, I don't think that would be appropriate in this instance. In today's retail and commercial world, you're not quite sure what you would need. With those, you comply with parking. And so if there's one space, or if it was divided into 4 retail or commercial spaces, small office, if you will, like that, it still meets all the parking requirements.
Not necessarily, only because we've got the, or any part thereof, which could create a larger parking requirement if my mathematical abilities are marginally okay. Mr. McGinnis, am I wrong on that?
Yeah, depending upon
The use.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Depends.
We have certain uses that require a certain number of parking spaces per square footage.
If we were to divide it and it required more parking, we'd have to either get a parking variance, or we would reconfigure the interior walls so that we meet the parking requirements. Or
No.
we don't use that use, that's all.
What I was leading up to is that certain uses
Certain
require
uses,
number of parking spaces per square footage, but also certain number of parking spaces per employees.
Understood,
So that's where this might come into play.
right.
Okay.
Mr. Hocker is aware of that, having the other buildings in town. And so
Yeah,
we
if
can work on
anyone's
it.
aware.
Yeah, we can work on that, sir.
There wouldn't be any food prep or those type of commercial.
We don't foresee anything like that.
But that's part of the use,
I mean,
that's
there may be a
possible.
There may be a retail use that has some food prep. I just did an application which is totally catering. They use that, you go in, you order, but you have it delivered and that type of thing. You know, uses are evolving in downtowns and in all the municipalities now. Things we didn't contemplate 5 years ago are happening now.
That would limit the parking spaces also, isn't there stipulation with so many parking spaces per table or?
Yeah.
Well, there'd be no tables, we're not suggesting this is a
Yeah.
total takeout.
Total takeout.
Yeah, that's, I mean, cooking, like stoves and things like that, that you'd have to put in fire protection.
Yes, and, probably would not be, it would probably in this instance cost prohibitive, but I leave that up to the landlord.
And because of the way the mixed-use ordinance is written, they're not gonna become residential on the bottom. Just can't.
Not permitted.
Yeah, exactly. Just, that, I heard it floating around.
Not permitted.
Is there a possibility of splitting that right from the beginning, that number 2 space? The 1390 square feet, making that 2, or that wouldn't be prudent?
We don't think it is prudent. We've had a couple of inquiries of standard type of spaces, and it looks like a split would be appropriate, but in the future, you just never know.
Yeah.
And you mentioned something about lighting, I think I missed it, I'm sorry. The lighting in the parking area is,
Lighting in the parking area is all overhead on poles. I think the question was
No,
about,
no building lighting,
On
only
building lighting.
light to go in the door,
will only be security type at a door. That's in the code.
and that's building
and
required.
that kind of lighting doesn't affect the folks that are living upstairs?
No, because it would be very low.
Yeah.
On the first floor, the light might be at 7 feet,
Thank you.
just enough to light that door.
Gotcha.
Like the ground, so you
Yes, sir.
say.
No, I like it. Anybody, comments? Yeas, nays? Good? Any questions from the public? Any other comments? Hearing none, then we can motion for the resolution to move the application. Mr. Vervoort, second. Mark Ramundo, all in favor?
Aye.
Secretary, may we have a roll?
Ms. Badalamenti?
Yes?
Mayor Giordano?
Yes.
Mr. Vervoort?
Yes.
Mr. Ramundo?
Yes.
Mr. Fink? Mr. Kowalski?
Yes.
Mr. Misselwick?
Yes.
Mr. Orovitz?
Yes.
Mr. Fisilico?
Yes.
Mr. Panfile? Mr. Schatz?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure to be here and see you again.
Appreciate it.
Mutual.
All right, so we're going to, we got time, don't worry. Not the gentleman's time.
It's a hard 10, but I'll be out of here.
Hard ten. Oh,
You got one?
any old business? Council folks, anybody want to report on anything?
Everything's nice and
All right, everybody's playing nice?
I didn't say that.
All right, otherwise,
Things are nice in the
otherwise, off the record, we get Alphabito to come out to the neighborhood or something. Anyway. Yes.
What would I ask for?
Are we doing something, what?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, how do we do that? Joyce, do you write a letter
Should we
or
ask the
something?
Land Associates,
Matt, do you have any advice on that? How we get somebody to present for the field?
Just a letter from the board saying
Yeah.
we've seen this as 90% nobody says come out. But in this case, Mr. Coventry, instead of a letter saying come out,
Exactly.
Great.
Can we get Justin to come? That's Mr. Coventry. Sorry? That's Mr. Coventry. Oh, okay.
Is that Fred Provinger?
Justin.
No. Oh, Justin.
You'll just send a
I
letter.
may have to recuse myself, but anyway. Oh, yes.
Joe, what's the status of the United Way building property when the bones were on Wyckoff and Birch?
As of right now, nothing has been submitted.
There's no time limit, they could just stay and look like that for,
I've been through this already.
I don't know, I can't tell you what I don't know.
could the town ask that question, or we're not allowed?
I don't think you're allowed to.
But they took some of it apart and made it look worse than it was.
Because it's an eyesore. It's been like that for a couple of years now. Okay.
I got a couple of those.
You know,
proper venue to discuss this.
This is not the proper menu to discuss this. This is not the proper place to discuss that.
All right, anybody have any other comments? I have a question on Master Cha's lights blinking and changing color and all that over there.
The karate place?
Yeah,
I can take a look at that.
yeah. I
That's
thought
okay.
it was his sign at one point, but now it's no line lights or, it's just, you saw them?
Oh,
Yeah.
Caught my eye, I was turning.
Yeah, well, sure.
Right off of
And
Walter
then you-
Hammond, I looked left,
Yeah,
and saw, yeah.
don't look left, keep
Well,
going the right way.
I couldn't help it.
Great. All right, so we're set, everyone? Thank you. I think we're, motion to adjourn. Paul Huss and Stan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow, look at that. Would you look at that? 9:44. Thank you for coming out, Paul.